Welcome, welcome. My name is Tumi Alaushin, and I am a training producer at Informa. Informa Connect Academy is a premier global solutions and training provider. And based in the Middle East, we have offices in the UK as well as Australia. We've been in the region for over 30 years. And so we're well established and equipped to deliver all of your training and solution needs. We are also a part of the global aspect of Informa. So we're on the FTSE 100 within the UK. We're spread over 30 countries and over 11,000 employees. So we are so happy that you're joining our Informa Connect Academy webinar. With us today, who'll be leading on data governance in the AI era, managing risk and ensuring compliance. I have with me Steve Blais. He is a PMP, PMIP, and then also PBA, as well as an author, a consultant, a teacher, and a coach who has over 55 years of experience in information technologies across multiple industries and sectors. And so with us today, he is not a novice to this, and we are really going to learn a lot about how we take our organizations through this evolving area with data governance. So Steve, I'm going to hand over to you.
All right. Thank you, Tumi, and welcome everyone. We're going to talk about data governance, the way it was and the way it is going to have to be in the era of AI. But first, let's do a poll, just see what you think. Is there so much notoriety today? Everything is AI. You go to buy a box of cornflakes and it says AI, produced or something. Everybody wants to get on the AI bandwagon. So what do you think about that? I mean, it's, like the past 5 years. So is this a new technology that just currently gained validity? Is it an old technology, perhaps 50 years old, but we've only now begun to be able to do it? Is it an old technology, but only now there are ways of monetizing it? Or do you think we're in an AI bubble? From a financial point of view, of course, and it's really only temporary, like the bubble back in the 2000s, the web bubble. What do you think? So you should have a poll to fill out, and just take it. There's no definitely right answer. I'm not sure. Yeah, Shiraz, you'll tell us when the poll is over.
Yes. So we've still got 7 people left to complete. Would you like me to give you the scoring now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Those people might want to not vote at all.
So we've got 5 votes for the first one, 2 for the second, 6 for the third, and 1 for the last one.
Oh, all right. Well, as I say, there's no real right answer, but I'll give you a kind of an indication of which one it might have been here in a few minutes. So before we talk about AI, we have to talk about data governance, just in case. So what is data governance? It's a systematic management of data availability, usability, integrity, and security. A lot of things data governance happens. Data governance has been around, well, since I've been around, in various forms. Back in the late 1960s when I started in IT as a programmer. Back then we were computer scientists and such, and then we became programmers. But the idea of data management, they were managing the data to some degree. We didn't have a lot of complexity involved, magnetic tape and punched cards. But there was a management of that data. There was a governance. So we've had data governance now for what, 70 years, 80 years? So what does data governance really look like? Now, the components are down there in the lower left-hand corner. Quality and standards, accessibility, ownership, security, privacy, life cycle management, all of which we're going to be talking about. But this kind of circle here shows us what the general aspects of data governance are. You have to control the creation. And traditionally, this means the data that is created by the normal process of running the business. Right? You get a customer, so now you have customer data. You hire employees, you now have employee data. You buy things from vendors, now you have vendor data. So in the normal course of your doing business, you're going to be creating data. Then you have the storage of that data, where physically you're going to put it and what's going to go where. Then, as part of data governance, you have the use. This is perhaps almost the most important because we're governing who gets to access and use the data. So under use, we have the whole area of accessibility. Who can access the data? What can they do with it? How can it be used? All of that comes under data governance. Then the sharing. Who can share what data? For example, the organization that you work with will typically share all of the employee information with all the employees. So that if you want to know where some person is, sends you an email and you want to know where they are physically in the organization, you can find out. Find out a little bit behind that person, what their position is or something. But you can't get to the salary data in most organizations. That's not shared. That's only kept within those people who have authorization to work with payroll. Then you have the archiving. Now, this is where we start getting into data warehousing. Some data will be kept and placed archivally into data warehouses. Others will be kept specifically for purposes later or just because of retention. Now, retention is a big part of data governance. How long are we going to keep the data? What do the regulations call for? How much data can we keep and how long? And then the destruction of the data. Now, I did a good stint of my time with Star Wars in the Pentagon, not George Lucas Star Wars, the movie, but SDIO under Reagan. And this was a big deal of destroying the data. We literally, back then we had 3-inch floppies and 8-inch floppies, and we had to punch holes in them as part of destroying the data so that the device could not be used again. It wasn't just a matter of erasing everything, which we did before we physically destroyed them. That was part of data governance for the Pentagon. Now, why do you have data governance in the first place? And what is currently facing the organization as we move into artificial intelligence? First of all, there's the amount of data increasing geometrically, algorithmically over time. We're adding data constantly, not just new customers and new vendors and new employees that are being added to as opposed to replacing, because we have to keep all that data. All the transactions, the sales, but now as we move into digital transformation, we're now, and since the pandemic, we're allowing customers to access our data so they can buy things right online. Back then, they didn't have to leave their house. They could buy things because there was not much other choice. Not a lot of stores could be open. Now, it's just a matter of convenience. Why should I drive 30 minutes down to the mall when I can order it right from the comfort of my home? So we have a whole bunch of new data deluge. The amount of data is increasing, and therefore data governance must increase to accommodate that data. Then there is the basic changing of data. Back in the day, back when with traditional data governance, we dealt with rows and columns. We dealt with structured data, data that fit You know, you had a 25 character last name, a 12 character ID number, 8 characters for the amount paid, and so forth. And if it wasn't 8 characters, you left 0 filled. So that was always the same numbers. Made it easy with relational databases to work. But today, there are so many things now we can do with unstructured data, emails, text messages, DMs, streaming video, streaming audio, voicemail messages. All of these are unstructured. They don't fit nicely into a relational database structure. But there's data there that we want. Using, for example, from a security point of view, we have streaming video recording with cameras all over the building. Well, that is all data. We can see who's doing what and then feed it into, say, a machine learning algorithm to find out, hey, that guy in hallway number 3 does not look kosher there. That guy looks like a bad guy. That's all using data from streaming video. That doesn't fit in with the classic data governance approaches. Then there's the competitive pressures, and the idea of digital transformation is the main part of this. If your competition is offering a uni access so that the people can access their accounts, buy things 24 hours a day from any device. They can access it from their phone, from their home computer, from their office computer, from any mobile device. They can access it from their watch. If they're doing that, you're going to be falling behind if you don't keep up with that approach of being able to start a transaction from one device and complete the transaction from another. There's also regulatory pressures in terms of, and this is fledgling, shall we say. There are a lot of regulations and laws and so forth about data access and privacy and so forth, the GDPR for one. But the big thing here is we don't know what's going to happen this year. Now we got a president in the United States who's making edicts constantly, change this, do this. Who knows when he's going to come up and make an edict about artificial intelligence? Many of the organizations from Europe to the Middle East to the Pac Rim to the Western Hemisphere are evaluating how they can control AI. And even the AI people who are developing it are saying, we need some guidelines here. So we don't know if we're going to go in one direction and find out that's not what the law will allow in 2026, for example. And finally, of course, there is the technological evolution where who knows what's going to happen next. ChatGPT didn't exist as far as a commercial product 2 or 3 years ago. Now, this is the traditional governance framework with the data governance consists of policies, procedures, processes, standards, roles, who does what, and responsibilities, the technology infrastructure itself, and ways of determining that we are within the regulations, we are within the standards, we have done this much, we have this much data, these are the people accessing, and so forth. Metrics and monitoring. Basically, looking at these kinds of things here. We're talking about being focused on security, data privacy, retention, data quality, data acquisition, regulatory compliance, access to data and usage of that data, such as acceptable usage policies, data sharing, physical data regulatory repository and location, and the aspects of business continuity and disaster recovery as it applies to data. Now, all of this stuff in traditional data governance has been going on and evolving over the years and, into the 80s and the 90s and being modified and changed to accommodate new technologies and so forth. but primarily it all is located in IT, and more specifically in the database administration departments. So that you have a CIO that might be running all of data governance, falls under the CIO. It's a technology thing. After all, I mean, it's databases. Who knows how to build a database over in the business, and the disk drives, and all of that in the cloud and all. That's all technology. That's traditional data governance. Okay, so that's data governance. What about artificial intelligence? Well, AI enables automation, insights, predictions, and personalization, among other things. The main aspect that we're concerned with in AI is not the models or the code or the R language or Python. We're talking about data. And what has brought artificial intelligence to the forefront? Artificial intelligence began in 1947 with some ideas by John von Neumann and others, and then was coined in 1952 at a conference at Dartmouth. The term artificial intelligence was coined. So it's been around, at least conceptually, for what, 70 years? I mean, where is it? Where's it been? It's mostly been in colleges, universities, academia, where they're in research labs and so forth. So why haven't we used it? And why are we using it now? Well, you can probably say it's right there. Because we now have the ability through Hadoop and others to process and maintain, to receive networking capabilities, large band networking capabilities, and deal with big data. Because artificial intelligence, in order to give you anything of worth, requires a whole bunch of data. And it relies specifically for success on the quality and the reliability of that data. As a result, once we had the ability to build big data and have the lots and lots of data, access to data, things like social media and so forth, that made artificial intelligence and machine learning much more valuable, and we could monetize it. So what does artificial intelligence look like? Well, not really like that, but that's a good enough picture. Back in the day, well, it's not even that far ago, back in maybe even the teens, before artificial intelligence took off all by itself with the phrase artificial intelligence was just another tool used in business intelligence. Now, hey, artificial intelligence has got its time in the spotlight here. So we're going to call artificial intelligence kind of an umbrella term here. That includes machine learning. Machine learning is part of artificial intelligence, as is data mining, as is business intelligence now. Now, artificial intelligence also includes robotics and so forth, but we're not going to get into that at this point. We're just talking about data governance here. Data analytics, including descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. Also, data visualization, how the data is presented to human beings for understanding, and AI agents. One of the things that separates artificial intelligence from machine learning and data mining and all the rest is the use of agents. Going out like a Google spider for your search engine, going out and getting information on your behalf. Searching the web for the best flights to the place you want to go, like a travel agent. So for the rest of this webinar, when we refer to AI, we're talking about all of those things included. Now, you've got a number of different kinds of data, and I've tried to make them all rhyme here, just for the fun of it. Owned data is what the company owns, what your corporation owns. Customer data, employee data, vendor data, accounting data, and so forth. Grown is the data that you are growing. You have developed over time. Cloned data is data that is derivative. That is to say, you've got a birth date, so your age is such and such. The data that you own is the birth date. The data that says what your age is has been cloned, has been created. It's derived. Now, known data is a little different. Known data is the data you have in the organization that may or may not be digitized. You got file cabinets, paper files, that's data. It's not yet on your computers. Also, you have spreadsheets, Excel, local spreadsheets. So you may be using one now, or your Word document. You may be taking notes right now in a Word document, sitting in the organization. If you're using the organization computers and the organization networks, that data that you're creating, the notes that you're taking, are part of the organization's data that actually belongs to the organization from a legal perspective. So we know, the organization knows that data is going on, but they may not be doing anything with it. Many, what we call secret IT or shadow IT, I asked IT to get me this graphic out of all the data out there. And they said, yeah, we would have it done in 5 months. I can't wait 5 months. So let me download some data into my spreadsheet and I'll create it myself. Bang, data. Data not even recognized by IT, but we know it's there. Now, back in the day when marketing wanted to get a bunch of new names as prospects for whatever they're selling, they would put up jars and say, here's a raffle. Put your name in the jar, fill out your name and your address and your phone number, drop it in there. We're going to pull out a name and somebody's going to win a trip, all expense paid trip to Tahiti. This would be in fairs, and this may be actually predating you. And at my age, I can remember those kinds of things and all over the place. There are all sorts of raffles and things that you could put your names in. Today, we don't do that as much. We get our data, new names and so forth, from registrations on websites, from people responding on blogs. So we can pick up that data. That's called sown data. We're sowing the seeds to create more owned data. The biggest issue today is cone data. Now, cone here is like a ice cream cone. The top of the ice cream cone is all the data in the world, social media and so forth, going down through that cone, filtering down into our organization. That's a lot of data. Then droned information is information that's created by AI agents or anybody else out there feeding data back, such as the Internet of Things, streaming data into the organization through sensors and so forth. And finally, unknown. There's data out there we just don't know about, and perhaps we don't care about, but someday we might. Now, out of all of this is the data that is controlled by traditional data governance. Notice the last three are not controlled by data governance today. That's where AI comes in, because those three are all feeding data in to AI. Speaking of, here's data governance for your artificial intelligence. There's the artificial intelligence right there. Again, a symbol that just represents you have a facility in your organization that does artificial intelligence, whether 80% of your organization is depending on artificial intelligence, or there's 3 guys off in a corner of the building someplace playing with some graphics. It's artificial intelligence. It's getting its data from transactional data. Of course, that's your owned data and your cloned data. It's getting data from your internal repositories, such as your data warehouse. It's getting data from external data that comes in and is stored internally. That's covered pretty much by traditional data governance. However, then we have social media, we have data brokerage, we have the Internet of Things, all feeding data into the organization. Plus, we have those AI agents going out and getting more information. And there are a couple of other aspects now that you may or may not have as part of traditional data governance. You have the data lake. Much of the data when people are working with bringing data in for use eventually by any of the analytics or the artificial intelligence, they reside in a data lake so that they don't get into and mess up your structured data in the warehouse or your traditional data stores. And oh, yes, there is also the cloud. Many organizations do almost all of their AI and analytics in the cloud to ensure that it's separate, and because the amount of data coming in varies like an accordion constantly, up and down, up and down. And the organization does not want to pay for a large amount of data and not having to use it all, and also doesn't want to run out of space internally. You have to go out and buy more disks in a rush. So, hey, give it to somebody else. Load it up to the cloud. Let Azure take care of it, or AWS. This is what governance of artificial intelligence has to deal with today. Things like attacks, which are no longer focused on the perimeter, regulatory agencies which are coming up with new laws that never happened before, the competitors who are already using AI, scammers who are using AI to scam your customers as well as your employees, and of course the customers themselves demanding 24-hour service and access by any device. So let's look at the structure here. This is your typical organization. You've got your online transaction processing and your extract, transform, and load to get over to your data warehouse. You've got your online analytical processing. Yesterday's data governance was there. It only governed OLTP. We covered the ACID rules and so forth to make sure that we could do distributed online transactions. And that was pretty much all we had for all. This is yesterday's data governance. Today's data governance, what you might be under right now, will include all the way over to the data warehouse and the data mining aspects, the full ETL, which cleanses the data, decides what data is going into the warehouse and how it's going to go there, and so forth. This is pretty much what most organizations have. When it comes to getting into AI, now you're talking about the entire shebang here, everything. That includes that external data, which may or may not reside in-house. It might reside out on a cloud someplace. The data lake, which may also reside in-house or out in the cloud someplace. It's all getting that streaming data coming in from all over the place, social media, Internet of Things, data brokers, and so forth. That's where the data governance has to be for AI today. Now, we just talked about kind of the technological. Let's talk about the conceptual aspects of AI. This is the cross-industry standard process for data mining, for analytics, for pretty much artificial intelligence as well, because this is the core. Artificial intelligence has a lot more than this, of course, but we start off by, we need to understand the business and know what questions we're going to ask, what problems we're going to solve using AI or any of its facets. We have to understand where the data is going to come to solve those problems. Where are we going to go to get the data? And once we've decided where the data might be, how are we going to get it? How are we going to make sure that it is reliable and accurate? And how are we going to clean that data for privacy, security, etc.? Once we have all the data, then we write the code. We build an experiment or a model or an algorithm. You've heard all those terms referring to the core of AI and machine learning and etc. Now we're going to do that so that we know what the expected results are, run it against data that we know what the results should be, and we're going to test it. Now here we get into pretty much software development. If you've ever had an experience with software development, you know that you write the code, you test the code against data, you compare the results, and then you go back and modify the code and do it again and again and again until it's right. You know, I've spent many years doing that. With AI, machine learning, data mining, etc., especially with AI and machine learning, there is one little difference. Actually, it's a big difference. That loop, you might be changing the code, but you also might be changing the data until it's right. Then once it's right and you say this is working, then you put it into production, which is feeding a dashboard, coming out with a single prediction that you can then use, and so forth. So you can see it's all dependent on data. And there is the universe of data. That's all the data in the world out there, changing and increasing consistently every minute. It'll double or triple in the time we do this webinar, for example. Now, within that universe of data is the data that's available to your organization. Data that you have internally, data that you've contracted with data brokers to get, data that you're streaming in on your own, data coming in through your sensors, through the Internet of Things, and so forth. This is data that is available to you. Within that data, for this particular process of data mining, machine learning, or artificial intelligence, we're going to create what is called a set of training data. Data that we know what's in it, and we know exactly what it should be. Let me use as an example fraud analytics. We have a bunch of attempts, accesses to our platforms, to our organization. And we're looking for fraudulent, bad, malevolent actors out there, bad data coming in. Now we have a set of that, thousands or even millions of transactions coming in all the time. We have a set of a couple of 100,000 maybe, 10,000. Out of that, we know which ones are bad. Maybe we even put them in ourselves. We have identified, as human beings, we've identified that these are bad transactions. They should not be allowed in. And we can use IDS and IPS to help us out. Now we run this against the training data. And the AI produces a list. These are the ones that are bad. We sit down, we evaluate it, and we say, no, AI, that's not right. This one is perfectly valid. You made a mistake. And you missed these three. Let me tell you what you're looking for here. Let me describe this. And we do it again. And then we do it again until the experiment, the code, the model gets it right. Once it gets it right, then we produce the testing data, a bigger sample of data. Now, we may not know all of the specific transactions that are fraudulent, but we do know that 14.137% of these are fraudulent. So we run it against 250,000 transactions and see if it comes out with that percentage. Again, if it doesn't, we go back and look at the data, look at the model, and adjust. Then, once we say we're comfortable with this, it's got a 94.664% accuracy rate. We say, run it against the world, run it against all of our available data. Now, this model here is enhanced today by machine learning, because machine learning does that automatically. It checks the data itself against the model, what it should be. It knows that this should be the data. It checks it, and then it adjusts itself. Whereas with data mining processes, we would be, and early fraud analytics without machine learning, we would be doing that ourselves. Totally supervised machine learning, totally supervised data mining. At some point with using machine learning, it can become unsupervised. Now, we probably already have to go into a long dissertation about why what the advantages of artificial intelligence are and all the things you can use it for. What I'm really concerned about, which is why data governance is there, are the issues such as biased data, or for that matter, coding bias, as it shows in the bottom there, improperly acquired data, data that we shouldn't have or that has slipped in under the covers, privacy violations, security of the data acquisition, security of the data itself, security of that data lake. We have a private cloud. We need security on that data lake, even though the data lake doesn't really contain any information of value to anybody. We still have to secure it. Misalignment, unexpected consequences of what we're doing. All of this falls under the purview of data governance. All of this may not be under the current purview of traditional data governance and has to be beefed up and added to and so forth, including coding bias. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go in as a data governor and monitor the coding. That means we're going to provide guidelines as to the data the coding can use. We're going to evaluate the coding from a data point of view, saying, oh, your data is wrong. And we know it because we're the business and we are telling you the data is wrong. You figure out the code. You figure out why. We're just telling you it's wrong, and that's part of data governance. But with all of that, and maybe we can put everything under data governance. Wouldn't that be great? Cover it all so that none of these concerns will bother us anymore. There's still the human being that does not fall under data governance, such as unrealistic expectations. I expect with this predictive analytics, you to tell me exactly what's going to happen in 2027. I'm a movie producer. I want to know what movie is going to be the most popular type of movie in 2027 so I can start working on it now. Unrealistic expectations. That's a human thing. There's nothing that data governance can do about that. Same thing with misinterpretation of results. Well, it says 52% chance that this will happen. That means it's going to happen. It's more than the majority. That's a bit, because you also have another one that says 37%, you have 44%, you have 27%. Lots of things might happen. It's like calling the chance of rain. And finally, kind of malevolent. Management will manipulate the results. Keep running this until I get what I want. Let's change this and change that. Let's move the data over here. Or could be malicious manipulation by somebody else, your competition, for example. So those concerns about the bottom three concerns are nothing that you can do with data governance. But we must make sure our data governance covers these other factors. So let's look at each of those factors a little closely. Here's provenance and data integrity, major aspects of data governance. There's our current data governance without AI, and there's not much we have to worry about anymore because we have checks and balances, and it goes through all sorts of transactions, and there's constant checks in the transactions. Is this right? Is this wrong? Do we have the data we need? We get all sorts of systems out there that each of them check the same data. So we can be reasonably comfortable now after these years that we have some fairly good data integrity inside, and we can trace all the data from the time it hits our system to the time we use it. We can trace it back. We run data life histories, for example, and so forth. But what happens when we add in AI? Now we have data coming in from all other places which are not covered with our checks and balances, with our extra code, our checks on the data and so forth. So we need to have governance which makes sure that all the data coming in from the outside is also under the same data integrity rules as the data inside. And we can have that data. We can trace it back. Internally, we only have to trace it back to the time it was developed. Somebody punched in a key on the key punch machine and created a card with my name and address on it. We know exactly where it came from and maybe even the piece of paper that I typed it from. We know all that. We've done it for years, decades. Now we're not sure. How can we prove that that data has not been manipulated and we are the victim of data poisoning, purposefully or accidentally? We come up and we say, this is 86% chance that this will happen based on our predictive analytics. It's 86% chance that this will happen. But what we don't know is our competition put a lot of data in there so that our data is skewed so that we think that's 80%. The data is correct, the numbers are correct, but the data itself is wrong. It's been manipulated with. That's data poisoning. And we have many examples of that over the years, including even elections in different countries, which have produced the wrong candidates because only a certain amount of people voted. A large amount of people voted for one candidate who came up and voted. The rest of the field, people didn't come out that much. So out of a 40% voting population, 20% were all from the same place, skewing the results. Happens all the time. What data governance do we have? What policies, what procedures, what processes do we have to check on, if not prevent, data poisoning? How about security? Well, there's your organization, the big box there. And classic security, I spent, when I was at Star Wars, I was head of security for Star Wars at the time, not head of total security, just for computers. And so what we were concerned with was the perimeter. Now, physically perimeter, that means the door, lock the door and put guards at the door. We're protecting the perimeter. From a technical perspective, we're talking about intrusion detection systems, intrusion protection systems, firewalls, and so forth. The bastion hosts, demilitarized zones, DMZs. We're talking about all of the stuff we use in security to protect our systems from being attacked by others. And that's pretty good. We're fairly good at that. We can keep the perimeter protected. Not 100%. Anytime we come up with a protection, bad guys got enough time, they can figure out how to get around it. Then we have to protect against it, and they'll figure out how to get around it. It's an ongoing chess game, made even worse by the advent of AI. So there's all of our guys out there sending data in and throwing the cloud, because a lot of them we're going to send directly to the cloud and then send it into our AI processes. And there are the attacks. And where do the attacks come? Instead of going at the perimeter, trying to get through open ports and so forth, the attacks are now coming at the data in flight or the data at rest. For example, it's very easy to attack an IoT device because they usually don't have a lot of security. And what about attacking YouTube and Facebook and so forth that have been happening? How do we know that when we scrape some responses from Facebook, a couple of pictures or something, maybe to send to HR for evaluation of resumes, how do we know there's not a bot inside it? There's some stenography going on. We need to expand our data governance to include security in that aspect, the data security itself, which many security organizations just are not really anxious to get into. How about the data brokers? What are we doing to ensure that the data brokers are sending us clean and unmolested data? Bigger issue with security than we had been previously worried about. Now, privacy, yeah, we got privacy. That's covered. We make sure that our employees, our customers, our vendors are all private. We don't use them outside of the customer. Besides which, we don't want customers' names to get out because our competitors might get them. The same thing with our employees. We got an AI expert working for us. Somebody out there wants an AI expert. We don't want to let that data get out. So we got a lot of privacy going on, more so today than we used to have in the past. Back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we didn't even worry about privacy because nobody could get in and nobody understood it anyway. But with AI, we got a completely different issue here. We have identification issues, for example, especially when you talk about the regulations, GDPR and so forth. How do you know when you're sitting there at your computer and you decide to go online and buy something? Hey, it's lunchtime, and you open up and you walk away, and somebody out there is going to buy something from you, from your company. They're accessing your company, and you let them in because they're a legitimate customer. They've signed in. They've entered their verifications. You've even done a two-factor authentication on them. They went to their phone, typed in the number, but then they have to run away and get some lunch, or they have to leave their desk. What's to stop a bad guy from coming in and sitting down at that desk and continuing the transaction? Do something malicious. Buy a whole bunch of stuff and mail it to another address, theirs. How do you know that person who is doing that is still the same person who signed on? Identification issues have to be changed. Your AIM, access and identification management, now is a big thing, especially when you're talking about accessing the cloud. We have to re-identify and continue to identify, something we didn't have to do under old current data governance. We have privacy by design, designing in privacy, differential privacy techniques like just putting in noise so that we can't identify a particular person. And also the fact that all privacy is equal, but some privacy is more equal than others. Federated learning approaches, privacy enhancing technologies, all of these now are coming into the front. For data brokers, we have to make sure that, how do we know that data brokers aren't sending their data out? Background. So you've got a picture of someone and you're going to guarantee that person privacy. You're not going to let anybody know, you know who it is, but there are people in the background. And if you use that picture for something else, they could complain or even sue that you're using their picture without permission. You say, we're not using your picture, we're using this person in the front. It came from their Facebook page. Doesn't matter. We also have the issue of anonymization. How do we anonymize? Do we really need the names and addresses for analytics? No. But how do you go about anonymizing them? How do you keep the gender and the age and the color of their hair and things that you want for marketing or whatever analytics without being able to identify that person? And of course, finally, the big thing is the use. Once you have that picture or that name or that information, what are you going to use it for? What can you use it for? What are you allowed to use it for? This also gets into regulations like compliances. We're pretty well within all the regulations. Most of our systems are in-house with a classic data governance. There are some regulations we would worry about. The GDPR may fit in a little bit, but mostly we're talking about AI issues. So there's all of the things, all of those now may be subject to different regulations. And we can't say, oh, we did not know about that regulation. And all the companies, there are lawsuits going on. Google and I think, was it Facebook and Meta and Amazon were both fined recently by the European Union. So in here, we're talking about laws and regulations outside the organization governing that data, each of those red lines there, the data coming in, govern that data as much as they govern the data at rest inside each of those organizations. And eventually we'll have regulations governing our good old AI agents. And finally, the integration. Yeah, we got internal systems. We don't have to worry about integrating them. They're already integrated. They're working. So, we got data governance about how the data all fits together and so forth. But then we add artificial intelligence and the cloud that usually comes with artificial intelligence. And in data governance for integration, we're talking about load balancing, transactional systems with analytic systems, covering the analytics in the cloud, especially if we're doing all our analytics in the cloud. The movement of data between transactional and analytics repositories. That's the ETL going into a data warehouse. Coming out of the data lake. Are we going to use our analytics directly in the data lake? Or are we going to move the data lake to the data warehouse? Or are we going to put them someplace else? Coordination of the data lakes and the big data repositories inside or outside of the organization. All of this is new. All of this has to be included in the data governance. So why is it important? we want to know what's going on now within our organization in the marketplace. This is done through descriptive analytics. This is the oldest of the analytics. We've been doing this for decades. I used to write reports which would describe what was going on. Of course, those reports came out 6 weeks after the close of the month. They would find out what went on 6 weeks ago. Now you run descriptive analytics to find out what happened yesterday or an hour ago. Diagnostic analytics tells you what is going on. Why is it this way? Why did we drop in sales by 2%? What was the cause? What was the most likely cause? Diagnostic analytics cannot tell you what the cause is. A human being has to decide that, but it can give you the most likely, like looking through the Physician's Desk Reference 5, PDR 5, going through all of that. It's a big, thick book, probably 4 or 5 inches thick. All of the diseases that we have identified and all the symptoms, and saying, if this person has the symptoms, these symptoms most likely is one of these diseases, starting with the one most likely down to the one that least likely. Instead of having a doctor figure out what's going on, we're going to do this, let the computer do it. That's diagnostic analytics. That's great to have. How about what might happen in the future? What is the percentage chance that horror movies will still be popular in 2027? What is the next big thing that we want to sell? And then prescriptive analytics. If this is the next best thing, big thing that's going to happen, what can we do to make it happen? If this is a bad thing that's going to happen, if we continue in this direction, we're going to lose money. What can we do to stop from losing money? What are things others have done from the world of data that we have? We want to make recommendations. Since you watched this movie at Netflix, these are the other movies. Since you bought this book at Amazon, these are the other books. Since you bought this piece of clothing, you might want to also look at these. Your people who have bought this in the past have also bought this. Your friends and neighbors have bought this. All of that will increase business, as we know, because we have seen it happen over the past 10 years, and that is called cluster analysis, which is also another aspect of artificial intelligence. And that's all great stuff. That's why it's important to get that governance in there so that we can start depending on all these things. So what does it come down to? Here's what the bottom line is. As I said, database administration and IT run data governance technologically based. What we want to do is move that governance over to the business side, to the SMEs and to the business managers running under a chief data officer and a chief data office, a chief privacy office, all on the business side. Oh, we want some advice and counsel from the technology side, but we want to put it on the business side. And I say that as a technologist for 55 years, 57 years, because there's also ethical considerations and social and societal impacts of artificial intelligence that IT is not, and should not be concerned with. You say, well, wait a minute, Steve, you got business people here. They don't understand technology. They don't understand what, the R language and Python and all that stuff. How can they possibly do governance? That's because governance sets policies and guidelines. The enforcement is left up to others. That's where technology comes in, is enforcing the guidelines. The chief data office can set up stewards, which is a common thing to do, who are the ones who have the oversight of the data. They know what the data is. IT doesn't know what the data is supposed to have. They just have a container for that data to be in. Data ownership. I own this data. I'm from the business. I'm the best person to own that data, and data custodian. These are the new roles. They could be part-time roles that are now played with AI. We have to, in order to make sure the data is accurate, complete, and reliable. Ultimately, what we want is data democratization. We want everybody in the organization to have access to the power of AI and have access to all the data they need at their fingertips when they need to make a decision. They don't have to say, well, I can't make this decision. I have to check with someone else. It's all right there. on dashboards, on reports, on the screen. That's data democratization, self-service analytics. Ideally, that's where we want to go. The only way we can get there is through AI data governance. Bringing us to the last poll here. So, do you think that AI will take over our lives and kind of run things like Terminator or some other science fiction movie? It's possible. It can never achieve the evaluation that humans have. As long as humans control the data, humans will control AI, and rote data jobs with repetitious decisions will be taken over by AI. The rest will always be performed with the humans. Strictly opinion. What is your opinion?
Thank you so much, Steve. The second poll will be up shortly. We are close to, there we go. The poll is now up. Steve, that's been so informative, and we are close to running out of time. And so I just wanted to go through some of the questions that have come up in the short time that we have, and then we'll go through the answers of the poll shortly. So one of the questions we got here was with trying to make sense of it. Okay, so with the ever-increasing data volume, what strategies can prove most effective in managing this like AI-driven environment?
The first strategy is to take AI seriously and recognize the dependence AI has on data. Not try to bring data AI in until you have the data, and focus on the first two steps. What is the problem or problem? What are the problems? What are the questions that you need answered, the problems you need solved, which AI can do for you? Define those, then define the data you need. As you define the data, you'll be identifying more and more data you'll be bringing in.
Right.
At that point, then you want to move the structure over and include IT, because they have to create the places for the data to be. Working from that direction is the best way of working to control the data governance of AI.
Great. Okay. Just trying to sift through the questions, see, because a lot of it has been answered from the conversation and from your slides. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think this one may come up. What initial measures can be taken for an organization that they want to take, shifting from being reactive to being more proactive with data governance? I think you've mentioned this before. Some of the questions, I think they've been answered, but I just want to give a chance.
Yeah, again, it's the same thing I just said. Understand the questions that you might be asking. To be proactive means what can I think of that I might want to ask next year? What am I going to ask that'll keep me in ahead of the game for next year or next month? What can I ask that'll help me beat the competition? Now, we have not been doing that in the past because we have not had the technology to answer those questions. So why bother asking? Now we have to kind of free ourselves, get out of the box of existing in-house data and say, everything's open to us because we have all the data in the world. So what do we want to know? That will get you very proactive.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so like I said, there's a few questions, but I think a lot of it has been answered, and I've just brought those main one up, but I'm sure maybe there's some more. But from the poll, with 58%, the question that came up was the third option, which was, as long as humans control data, humans control AI. And then in joint second place was, it is possible, but not for a while. And then that was joint with rote data jobs with repetitious decisions will be taken over by AI, and the rest will be formed by humans. And the last one was, AI can never achieve data evaluation that humans have, and therefore cannot take over. So option 3 seems to be the most popular with the audience.
And the answer to this, there is an answer, and we'll have that answer in 2027, 2030, sometime around there. We don't know right now which one is going to be the answer.
Awesome. Wow. Steve, I just wanted to say thank you so much. We are literally bang out of time. Thank you for the attendees that have stayed right up until the very end. There was so much information that was gone on, so much that was shared, and especially with the link with business practice and the merging with the IT and data and obviously business. Like, it all comes together. This is not one person's problem. It's everyone's responsibility, and especially those in technology spaces. I think you have the voice to push the urgency if data governance isn't something that is a priority. And I'll just take the last comment before we round up. Can we imagine that big companies which are blinding AI technology can control government data and even blackmail governments? And I guess that's kind of referring to what we're talking about with elections in places and kind of like false results, reflecting, I guess, what other political aspects would want. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure joining us this afternoon. And please do keep in touch on the Informa Connect LinkedIn page for more information. And Steve, I can only thank you again. Thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
What if you and your team can be even more? Even more informed, competitive, accomplished, even more successful, with programs designed to inspire and empower everyone to become even more. Introducing Informa Connect Academy. With hundreds of global, digital, and in-person training courses led by world-renowned industry experts, reimagining learning experiences for even more unlocked potential. Informa Connect Academy, available at informaconnect.com/academy.